Hi, folks. How are you? I'm Bruce McDonald, and this is the Talamanca Review. Why don't I see myself here? Huh. Well, let me just check it out here. Oh, yes, I'm live. Sometimes you have to make sure. Yeah, so I started a bit late tonight because I got sucked into watching the Jake Paul-Mike Tyson fight on Netflix, and boy, I'll tell you, 58 years old is too old to be fighting professionally, but I guess you just get it into your bones, and that's all you know. And, but I don't know, it's just kind of pathetic, actually, but what are you going to do, right? It is what it is. So I'm Bruce McDonald. This is the Talamanca Review. It's 11:31 p.m. my time, which is CST, Central Standard Time, and it's 11:15, 2024, the 15th of November, 2024. And I'm just going to do a very casual show and talk about whatever comes to my mind in a very intuitive way. So we've had an incredible amount of rainfall in Costa Rica, and parts of the country have been flooded out. And it's interesting where the flooding takes place. It's usually like in the biggest cities. Like out in the country and up in the mountains, we don't have flooding issues. I mean, the rain comes down. I mean, it's been raining. This is the rain month, and December too. And, it just rains and rains and rains. And you get used to it. It's actually quite beautiful when you get used to it, but it just keeps raining and raining. But the flooding was so severe in the cities in Alajuela and San Jose that they canceled school for the week, and so we got the grandkids. And then when the grandkids are here, the nieces and nephews come over to spend time with them. So I've got like 6 kids over here. They're sleeping in the back now, and they show up here, and my youngest grandson Tiago, he's 6. He had a flu. I mean, he got over it his first day, but I picked it up, and I mean, it's been like a decade since I've been sick. I did get COVID in like 2021, but it was like 3 days. Didn't really bother me that much. I was a little bit tired. I watched a lot of Netflix. I binge watched that series, The Sandman, the Neil Gaiman series, Sandman. I remember that from when I had COVID. And then I couldn't smell or taste for 2 weeks after I had it, which is the hallmark, right? That's how you know you had it. So, and of course, that's biological warfare. We're in a war right now, or let me rephrase that. There's no such thing as war. There's coordinated depopulation masquerading as national conflict. And when they get rid of nations, which is the goal of the globalists, you better ask yourself how they plan to depopulate, because they won't have the ruse of war anymore. And so this is, I think, why globalization is so frightening to most of us. Let me just recap, and try to circumscribe some of the major themes I've spoken about on the Talamanca Review since I, came on with this podcast going on a year ago, I think. And, or about, 8 or 10 months ago, I don't know. I'm really enjoying it, by the way. I really enjoy interacting with you people. I really enjoy being helped by you folks. I've been helped by a number of people, given little insights and information, and being able to help some people. It's really kind of a cool medium, the whole podcasting medium, especially, where I'm at with just a few listeners and, a few hundred listeners between several platforms. But it's a tight-knit group and everybody gets along, so we're in a massive depopulation event right now, and we're being lied to on every front. If you want to see some truth, see if you can find a mortician interview somebody who deals with bodies and embalming in funeral houses. Look at the nurse interviews. And see if you can find an interview with somebody, although they're kind of hesitant. Because remember, when you go public and you do these interviews, you're going to lose your job, right? So this is why so many of the whistleblowers are around 55, 60, because they're at end of career and they don't care if they get fired. Which is, it's kind of sad when you think about it. I mean, people used to sign up to go to war, like World War I and World War II and Korea, and they did it out of patriotism and a sense of duty. When you go back and you watch the original Captain America with Chris Evans, I mean, that's how they really felt about war back in World War II. I mean, a young man couldn't live with himself if he didn't go and do his duty. And now you can't even get people to do the right thing when there's no bullets whizzing at them. They won't even do the right thing if it means losing a job and a pension and benefits. And this is why I characterize the institutions as the satanic system. And this was the main thesis in The Light of Darkness, which I wrote with Bob Wiegand. And this overt institutionalization is really becoming the death of us now. And any reaction to it now is a controlled reaction. Let me be clear in my position, okay? So there's absolutely no ambiguity in what I'm saying. There is literally nothing happening in the public space that is real. Nothing. Not the Trump election, not Kamala Harris losing, not Canada with Justin Trudeau. Nothing is real. Okay? It's all coordinated. They're all sort of playing on the same team, right? And the team is power, and the team is privilege, and the team is I'm you, I'm me, and you're you, and I'm better than you. So if we have problems running this society, we're going to kill you so me and mine can continue to live the way we like to live. And they're going at it every way possible now. Now, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I get carried away with the optimism when Trump wins. I am excited when I see RFK Jr. on his team. I am excited when I see Tulsi Gabbard on his team. I like Matt Gaetz as Attorney General. I like a lot of things I see. But really their answers to their actions or reactions to circumstances that were allowed to get so far out of hand in the first place, we shouldn't even be wishing for the reaction. Okay? It's almost like wishing for skin cream or some kind of burn ointment after you accidentally put your hand on top of a hot stove. You never should have put your hand on the stove. And our hands get put on the stove quite intentionally. So everything going on in the public space now is intentional. And I've had a thesis for a number of years now. I'm not going to beat it to death. I've said it. I'll continue to restate it on the Talamanca Review. That the globalization we've seen through banking and economics, which is an arm of Zionism. Okay, the Zionists are still one of the most powerful groups within the financial world. All you have to do is look at BlackRock and Vanguard. I mean, they own everything now. I mean, how could we live in a world where 2 or 3 people own 80% of all the wealth in the United States and in other countries? And you're telling me that this wasn't by design? Just a couple clever Jewish boys who did well in math in high school, who, made their bones and got up into the trillions of dollars? It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And this, of course, is well documented in The Light of Darkness, that the system we're living in now and the progression to this moment, which is timed quite very well with the Apocryphon of John and the book of Revelation. And they're timing it because it's all choreographed. The Apocryphon of John and the book of Revelation is not prophecy. And I've spoken off air with a number of my listeners about my contempt for prophecy as a spiritual function. And they've reminded me that at the best of times, the prophet was just the person who went to a king, didn't predict the future per se, but just said, look, this is what you're doing wrong spiritually, and these are going to be the consequences if you don't change. And, I have no problem with that. Getting what I would call a high consciousness caution is una bendición, a blessing. So that form of prophecy I don't have a problem with. The prophecy I'm railing against is the end time prophecy. Like, if you have to do a bunch of mental gymnastics correlating older prophets to Jesus to validate that he's the Messiah, you're probably not a real Christian. Okay? If you don't read the Gospels and feel it in your heart and say, yeah, this is the way to live. If I live this way, I'll bring God into my life and I want God more than anything else, that's a Christian. And they exist. I've met them. But the syntactical Christian, the person who goes through the syntax of Scripture and makes a kind of a mathematical case, it's just ridiculous, okay? Absolutely moronic and ridiculous. And it is in large measure what's led us to this point. And as a result of the failures of our centralized religions, many people who are looking for meaning in life are going into the New Age. They're going into various fields of divination, astrology, Reiki, things like this. I personally don't recommend those things. Like I said, look, when I say I don't recommend something, I'm not doing it like a Christian. Like, hey, don't do that, you're going to go to an eternal hell. It's a lesson you have to learn. If you want to go through the cycle, then learn it. But in the end, nothing good will come of it. There's specifically the Reiki. I know so many people who get into Reiki who end up just having miserable lives because, okay, I should actually start explaining myself a little bit rather than just sit here like Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert tearing apart a movie like the ultimate contemptuous, snobbish critic, okay? So I want you to conceive of God as a field of experience, a canvas upon which reality can exist. And that reality is physical, emotional, what we feel, mnemonic, what we remember, and what we can see on the timeline if we can get our consciousness into the timeline, on the causal plane. And what we think, not only based on our senses and our immediate perception, but what the universal mind can pick up in deep meditation about the universe and the functioning of the body and the functioning of reality. And all of these things are taking place within a reality, the membrane of which, that which circumscribes it all, is God. And God is really sort of incomprehensible. I mean, everybody admits that. Like even in the Kabbalah, they say in the beginning, like the real God, incomprehensible. So and the God they're teaching you to relate with in the Kabbalah is probably Lucifer, okay? But the real God is incomprehensible, but you can live in accord with God. It's hard to explain. I'm sure there's people out there who understand what I'm trying to say. So, why is Reiki bad? Whenever anything happens to us in life, there's a spiritual reason for it. And you should never get rid of the disease without understanding the spiritual reason for it. Because you're kind of cheating the karmic cycle because it's come into your life to teach you something. So Every event that happens in our lives, good or bad or in the middle, is a teaching moment. So, and I have a lot of friends who are healers. Not a lot, but like at least a dozen. Like they make their living, or part of it anyways, as healers. They're not exploitative, like the Galactic Historian was, but for $100, $200, they'll help you with something, okay? But when you get one of these healings, it's almost a one-to-one correlation for finance, okay? So the disease is a debt you owe, and it's a debt you owe to life, and it's a debt you owe to the experience field of your soul coming in and out of bodies. And to honor the debt, you have to understand what the debt is, where it originated, and amend the original circumstance by which you got sick. Okay? Now, granted, a lot of that is not relevant now because many of the diseases we're dealing with now are man-made. For example, I don't know how many of you know this, but up until like 1940 or 45, cancer was so rare, statistics were not kept on it. It was like lupus. I mean, if you meet one person in your life who has lupus, it's like, wow, that's a miracle, right? I've known one person in my life who had lupus. It's just one of those super rare diseases, right? Like Lou Gehrig's disease. That's what cancer used to be. And so you have to ask yourself, why is there so much cancer now? A little bit of a headache because my grandson Tiago got me sick. My head's not pounding or anything, but if I cough, I get a little ice pick in my head. So, where was I? Oh. So this is why the system is going to be destroyed now. Because in my experience, the God force, or the membrane within which we live, doesn't like it when the rules of the game are hacked or violated on this scale. Okay? Now, the people who are running this might be able to fake or attempt to litigate to Dershowitz a case against God that it's all free will. They want to live in the cities. They want to live the life we've given them with the Wi-Fi and the condos and the mistresses and the rub and tugs, and they want it. But I don't think God's buying that anymore. Okay? And it's this system that we live in, which is an almost complete replication of reality, which is man-made. Most people who live in cities now live in such a cognitive bubble. They very rarely connect with reality. Literally everybody I know who is leading a good and balanced life, and more importantly, having an active engagement with the other side, spiritual and paranormal experiences, they're all living in the country. And you should take note of that, okay? Because the city is one big distraction field, and what brings the spiritual reality into focus is silence, and to a lesser extent solitude, which is next to impossible with 7 kids under 10 around you, but they're in bed now. I try to be a good sport. It's a little grating being called abuelo as well, which is grandfather. I don't have gray hair. It's just granddad, but it's so beautiful. I just love the life that my wife's given me up here. I love being a part of their lives, and I do feel blessed, very blessed. Because the energy you get from a family, it's a lot of work. It's extremely expensive. My biggest bill is my family. But it's worth it because I'm helping kids grow. I'm helping people get by. It's just beautiful. So going back to the formation of the Bank of England, William the Orange, because this ties into our friend the Orangeman. And it's, by the way, it is absolutely no accident that Donald Trump is being called the Orangeman. Now, another thing that a lot of people get wrong is they think everything is the conscious affectation of a conspiracy. Like people behind a curtain are doing this. Let's leak it into the public that he's the Orange Man. No, very often it's God. Okay? So what I mean by God is the truth of the situation will come out, but it'll come out in such a way that you don't think twice about it. Okay? And so the Orangeman is a reference to William the Orange, who was a Dutch Jew who briefly sat on the throne of England during the war between the Stuarts and Cromwell. And this was all financed and put together by Amsterdam Jews, coincidentally right around the time of Sabbatai Levi, who created what's called Sabbatean Judaism, which is literally satanic Judaism. Sabbatai Levi told everybody to invert the sacraments. So chastity becomes orgy, fasting becomes gluttony, and so on and so forth. Treating the weak with compassion, it becomes exploit the weak. You look all this stuff up if you want, Sabbatean Judaism. It's all on Google. There's really nothing I say that can be refuted or disputed, which is why I don't have too many people taking runs at me, and I don't think I will anytime soon, because the last thing that anybody would want to do, and I'm talking about the kinds of people who end up on Piers Morgan Live or something like that, is get into a debate with me on a YouTube channel, because they're not going to win. And it's not that I'm a better debater, I'm telling the truth. And it's not that I'm smarter than anybody else. It's just like, let's just say Spirit revealed it to me, right? And because of the way the information came into my life, I have a moral and a spiritual obligation to share it for those who have ears to hear it. So Donald Trump is the Orangeman. Now, it's also very interesting that at the crux of his platform is a new way to deal with money, right? Because remember, it was William the Orange who brought the modern fractional reserve banking into the world. Now, the Bank of England was based, don't get me wrong, the reserves were emeralds, diamonds, gold, silver. So it wasn't fiat currency the way we have fiat currency now, since Nixon took us off the mineral or the gold standard in either 71 or 72. Not the same thing at all. But still, so I don't know if anybody's ever explained the origin of banking to you, but I'll take the time to do it now. Jews have always been involved in wealth. And this is because, for reasons that I won't get into tonight, they've always been largely wealthy. Not all of them, but as a culture, as a people, they've always had wealth. And this goes right back to the myths of Solomon, right? I mean, Solomon was the wealthiest man in the world. King Solomon, the son of David. And so the Jews have always had wealth, and so they've always been involved in wealth and wealth protection and accounting and all of these sorts of things. And so what they did was, in London, they would keep lock boxes, okay, like safes, and this was the early banking. Now, let's say you got off a ship, you crossed the English Channel from Paris, and you were going to spend a month, excuse me, you were going to spend a month in London, or 2 months or 6 months in London. And because money wasn't really prolific back then, people would travel with different forms of wealth, okay? So you'd show up from Paris or Amsterdam or Lisbon, Portugal, or Milan, Italy, wherever you were coming from. You'd arrive in London, And the first thing you would do is you would go to see the keeper of a lockbox, which was always a Jew. I'm not being anti-Semitic, I'm just telling you history. Okay? And you would give them whatever you had, whatever you'd made the voyage with. Maybe it was like 10 ounces of gold, a diamond necklace, and, so on and so forth. And the merchant Jew would write a script for you. And sometimes they'd write many scripts, like let's say that you had the equivalent of what in today's money might be $100,000. They might write you 100 scripts for $1,000 each. And you could pass these at hotels and restaurants, and you could go and stay at a hotel, give them $1,000 script. And you're good to stay there for like 6 months in the hotel, eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner there every day, and have bourbon and cigars in the lounge every day. And all of the people working at the hotel are keeping a ledger of everything you use. And at the end of it, you would either use up the 1,000 or you would get a counterscript written for the balance. Now, what happened is this became so common. Oh my God, I have a frog in my throat like it's... Now, what would happen is that this would become so common that it became a normal form of commerce. And what the Jews maintaining the lockboxes noticed was at no point in the journey of running their business did they ever have everything in their lockbox taken out at once. Okay? And so what they started to do was overwrite the scripts. So let's say that you have $100,000 worth of jewelry, gold, silver, emeralds, diamonds, whatever, in your lockbox. You would write 300 or 500,000 worth of script because nobody would come back at the same time for the whole 100,000. It was just got to be the most brilliant scam ever, right? And this was the beginning of modern banking. This was the beginning of fractional reserve banking. And so fractional reserve banking means that if you, right now the fractional reserve is 20-1. And it changed, like I can only speak for Canada, but it didn't change to 20-1 until like the early 90s under Jean Chrétien. But before that, it was 10-1. And when Chrétien elasticized the money proliferation to 20-1, there were conservative economic columnists in the Canadian media calling it the end of fiscal reality. They thought the whole system would collapse in a few years, and it didn't. But it's getting pretty close now. Now, remember what I said at the beginning of the podcast. I do not know what's going on tonight. I guess it's just the cold I got, the little flu I got from my grandson. So remember what I said at the beginning of the podcast, which I can't remember now. It's like butterfly wings, right? Like the slightest little distraction and I lose it. In fact, you know what? I think I might call it a night tonight. It's late and I still have a fever. Well, this was turning out to be a great walkabout, but I I can't get my throat under control. So peace out, folks. I'm Bruce McDonald, and this has been the Talamanca Review.